Wonderful. And it's 12:30, so we'll get started and we'll stay here on time today. Thank you guys so much for joining me today with this happiness hacks presentation. My name is Mallory Rubek, and I am the wellness manager here at GatorCare. So I oversee the wellness programming for UF and UF Health employees. I see some familiar faces. So if you haven't been in any of my classes before, welcome and nice to meet you virtually. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to send that file one more time now in case there's anyone new that just joined. In a few minutes in, I will send it again. So in the chat, there is a fillable handout. You can use this to take notes during the presentation today. You should have received that. And again, I'll send it again in a few minutes. But just like I had mentioned before to those that hopped on, I ask that you all remain muted during this presentation today. But if you have questions, if you have comments, if you just want to share something, please do so in the chat, and I will make sure to check that throughout the presentation. If you have any questions or anything like that, happy to answer in the chat box. For now, I am going to go ahead and share my screen to my PowerPoint slides, and we will get started on the presentation. So let's start off by thinking about what happiness is. So I want you guys to all think about what you think would make you happier. So you can think this in your head, or you could share it in your chat box. So what do you think would make you happier, maybe like right now at this point? Maybe you are thinking in your head a relationship, more flexibility at work, maybe a bigger house, maybe losing weight or more money, right? These are some of the typical answers. Some of you have said sleep, more time to relax. Yes. So these are some of the typical answers. Stop eating. Well, we all need to eat, right? So what happens is we tend to look for happiness in the wrong places. What we think would make a big difference in our happiness levels actually doesn't, according to research. And the things that would make a meaningful impact are often overlooked. So that's not to say that some things like money or a promotion or a new car or being thinner won't make us happy, but they don't make us happy as we think they will. So we expect these things to bring us a lot of happiness for a very long time, when in reality, they bring us a little happiness for a short period of time. So today, we're going to talk about 12 ways to increase our happiness based on evidence. And it's in places that we might haven't looked before. So in general, why do we want to be happier? In general, happier people are more social and energetic. They're more charitable and cooperative, better liked by others. So it's not surprised that happier people are more likely to get married and stay married, have a better, bigger social network. Happier people are more productive at work, and they're better leaders and better negotiators. They tend to make more money. In fact, there was a study that showed that those who were happy as college freshmen had higher salaries 16 years later without any initial wealth advantage. Happiness actually impacts our health. Happier people have stronger immune systems, better biometric markers, and overall live longer. So how do we become happier? I'm going to go back, and I do want to say that all the content in this presentation is based on a book called The How of Happiness. I'm going to show that again at the end of this presentation by Sonia Lyubomirsky, who has actively researched happiness for more than 18 years. So all of this, and I'm not saying it out of thin air, it is from that book based on research. But yeah, let's learn how to be happier. And there were a lot of benefits to being happier. So we're going to start off by watching a short clip from a really funny guy. His name is Sean Aker. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of him before, but he researches positive psychology and has a book called The Happiness Advantage. So he's going to talk to us for a few minutes about how we currently think of happiness. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And we're going to start at here.
Around, they say this freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry.
Can everyone hear that when I just played that? Yes. Okay. So let's go back. We're going to watch this for a few minutes.
I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years, and what I found in my research and my teaching is that these students, no matter how happy they were with the original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up, I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, this freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about? Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, we already know that. So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just so you know, that's not a wellness week, that's a sickness week. What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stressed, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do.
All right, so what Sean Aker is saying is that we falsely assume that our external world predicts our happiness, when in fact, we can reverse the formula, right? Flip the switch. Success doesn't create happiness, but when you create happiness, when you find happiness in the present, then success will follow. So he uses the example of getting into Harvard, right? Our circumstances. How could all these people be sad at Harvard? They got into Harvard. But research shows us that our circumstances only dictate about 10% of our happiness. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a chart. This is the formatting's a little, it's not ideal, but basically what this is showing, the yellow block is 50%, which is our genetics. So genetics basically determine about 50% of our happiness. That little blue wedge is our circumstances. So that's about 10%. So whether we're rich or poor, healthy, unhealthy, beautiful, plain, married, divorced, that only dictates about 10% of our happiness. And the rest, this 40%, are our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors. So these are things that we can actively and intentionally try to control. So this 40% is what the bulk of this presentation will focus on. How do we harness the power of this 40%? And before we talk about that, I want to talk about another sort of adaptation based on research. And we're going to reference this throughout the presentation, but it's something called hedonic adaptation. So it's the tendency to return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. And this is the reason why our circumstances, the 10%, matter so little. So some examples of this adaptation is you could think of it like a new car smell fading, right? After time, it just kind of fades. Your nose, your body gets used to that smell. The 13th bite of your favorite dish. Maybe that first bite was really amazing, but after the 13th or 14th bite, it's not as exciting anymore. So this is a sort of response that can be incredibly useful when bad things happen. So it's the ability to bounce back after hardships. And again, it has to do with why the 10% of our circumstances matter so little to our happiness. And yes, Sandy had a question. That's two books, right? The How of Happiness and The Happiness Advantage. Correct. The Happiness Advantage is by Sean Aker, the man that I just showed you all. Really funny guy if you watch that whole TED Talk. And then The How of Happiness is by Sonia Lubomirsky, who this presentation is based off her book. Yeah. There are also some happiness myths, and we've kind of touched on that, but there's this myth that happiness must be found. I'm going to go on a journey and find happiness. But we want to look at happiness as creation instead of pursuit. Again, what Sean Aker was saying, finding happiness in the present, creating happiness from where you are instead of constantly pursuing it. Another myth is that happiness lies in changing our circumstances. We now know that only 10% of happiness lies in our circumstances, how much money we have, whether we're married or not, what we look like. And then the last myth is that success equals happiness. If we push and we try to succeed, happiness will come after. But what we find is that happiness, if we can find happiness here and now, that is what often leads to success, whatever success looks like to you. So I had mentioned the 40%, the thoughts, behaviors, these things that we actually have the power to change. How do we harness this power of 40%? This is where our 12 happiness hacks come in. We are going to talk about each of these, and all of these are rooted in scientific evidence. And basically, we wanted to provide you all enough variety to accommodate you all. you're not going to use all 12 of these. This is a lot, right? I want you to find any of these that work for you and work for your lifestyle, and to actively choose just a few of those to work on. And we're not going to skim each of these. We're actually going to talk about the best ways to practice each of these in detail, as determined by evidence. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and send you this PDF, this fillable PDF that I had mentioned before. If you hopped on a little bit later in the presentation, this is something that you can download on your computer and use to take notes during the presentation today when we go through each of these hacks. So I've just sent that in the chat. Whoa, that's a lot. I know, 12, it is a lot. But looking at this list, I want you to go ahead and choose some activities that will work best for you. And maybe you find that out throughout the presentation, like, oh, I really want to work on gratitude or my spirituality or something like that. But the point is, there's no one size fits all strategy. I want you guys to fit in these hacks, these 12 hacks, fit it in with your source of unhappiness. What are some things that are making you unhappy? Maybe it's social anxieties that prevent you from connecting to others. Maybe it's a sense of apathy towards your future. You're maybe struggling with motivation or something like that. So thinking about the root of your happiness will help you decide which of the hacks relate best to you. I want you to fit these hacks in, whichever you choose. Fit it in with your own strengths. Maximize those strengths. If you tend to be a very forgiving person, so one of the hacks is to learn how to forgive others. If you tend to be more of a forgiving person, choose that one. Harness on that strength of forgiving others. So definitely keep that in mind. And I also want you to fit it in with your lifestyle. Fit these hacks in with your lifestyle. Do you think about your current lifestyle? Do you struggle to find time for things? Maybe you want to find a strategy that doesn't tend to take as much time as another strategy, like practicing gratitude, for example. If you aren't spiritual or religious, right, you can cross that strategy off your list. So again, be true to yourself and be true to your life when you're looking at each of these. So hopefully you all either are a little bit familiar with some of these hacks. I've showed the slide a few times, or you've downloaded that PDF and you have it on another tab on your computer. Go ahead and take a look at the 12 of these, and I want you to mentally, or actually type into the fillable PDF, cross out any strategies that you know right off the bat aren't for you. Go ahead and kind of mentally do that, or actually type that out. Cross out anything that's just not meant for you right off the bat. And at the same time, I want you to maybe put a star next to any strategies that you think might be a good fit for you. I would suggest picking 3 or 4 max. Maybe you focus on 2, right? But put a little star next to any of those that you are really drawn to. Something that would feel natural to you, something you'd enjoy or value. So 4 strategies. And it's okay if you don't have any, if you don't have 4 yet. We're going to move through each of these in detail, so you'll have a better understanding. Bree has a good question. What increases flow experiences, or what is that? We will get there. So I'll explain that, and maybe that's something you find you want to work on when I actually kind of explain what that is. But great question. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's start talking about each of these happiness hacks. We're going to start off with gratitude. So gratitude is a lot more than saying thank you, right? As evidenced by this slide, it's wonder, it's looking at the bright side of a setback, it's thanking someone, counting your blessings, all of these things. So most research that's been done around gratitude has shown us that those who are consistently grateful experience more positive emotions, are happier, have more energy, are more empathetic, are more forgiving, and less likely to experience depression and anxiety and loneliness. Lots of benefits of gratitude. And I do want to mention that gratitude by nature combats this hedonic adaptation that I had mentioned before. It forces us to continually see the good rather than letting the power of good fade, right? So it's not necessarily about ignoring the bad, but it's bringing up or bringing to light the good that maybe we don't always notice. So, if gratitude feels like a good fit for you, pick one or two of these strategies to try. And the first one is keep a gratitude journal. So Lubomirsky conducted a study where participants were instructed to write 5 things they were grateful for. Half of the group was told to do this once a week. Half the group was told to do this 3 times a week. So I do want to note, compared to the control group, both of these groups had higher levels of happiness after the intervention. So just however many times a week, right? Once a week or 3 times a week, spending time to write down what you're grateful for improves happiness over time. So that's definitely an easy way. Another way to practice gratitude is to practice gratitude at a set time. If writing isn't your thing, it's not my thing. Journaling, writing, it's just not my thing. You can simply set aside time to count your blessings. Maybe right before bed, you make sure that every night or once a week, you sit down and just think about things that you are grateful for. Maybe it's when you're brushing your teeth, when you're getting out of bed in the morning. So just making sure you set aside time to think about what you're grateful for. And another way to practice gratitude is to express gratitude to another. And this can be a very powerful strategy, and it can be done by phone, by letter, by text, right, face to face. So just finding time to express your gratitude to another can bring you happiness. It's almost like a chain reaction of positivity. And that is gratitude. So if in your head you want to practice some of these, go ahead and write that down or think about that. One thing to note with gratitude is that variety is key, and its effects can be hindered by routine. So if you say, every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm going to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. Sometimes that can dampen the effects that gratitude has. So there was a study that was done. I had mentioned earlier about the 2 groups, where one group wrote once a week things that they're grateful for. One group wrote 3 times a week. The group that journaled 3 times a week had less positive effects than the group that journaled just once a week. So basically, there's a fine line between practice and routine. So vary the way that you practice gratitude to get the best effects of gratitude. Okay, the next hack is optimism. And optimism is similar to gratitude in that both strategies try to find the upside of a situation. But optimism is not only about seeing the good, but it's about seeing the good in the present or the past, and also anticipating a bright future. So, it's not naively asserting that the world is rainbows and butterflies, and it's not denying that the world can be a tough place. I mean, think about this entire last year. It's not been easy, but it's acknowledging that there's both good and wonderful in the world, and actively choosing to see through the lens of the wonderful. In practice, there are a few ways that evidence has showed that you can use optimism to increase your happiness. One is creating a best possible self diary. So taking 20 to 30 minutes to think about what you expect your life to be 1, 5, 10 years from now. Imagine that everything has turned out the way you wanted it to. It is truly that simple. And this is kind of enables you to recognize that it is in your power to transform yourself in your life. It offers up a feeling of control in your life. Um, so it's not an I'll be happy when this happens activity, but it's designed to provide you insight about your own goals and your needs, and to figure out what's truly important to you. So that's our best possible self diary. And that's something that you can sit down and think about, not necessarily write down again if writing is not good for you. Another way to practice optimism is to think about or write down your long and short term goals. It involves breaking out goals and sub goals needed to achieve your optimal future. It helps kind of identify next immediate steps towards attaining that future. Another way to practice optimism is to identify barrier thoughts. This means becoming aware of your own negative thoughts so that you can actively replace them with positive ones. An example would be, I can't believe I choked up in that meeting. I had the information ready. I didn't speak up. I'm so stupid. I'll never get a promotion. You have probably had similar thoughts to that before. I know I have. But thoughts like these create trouble, right? If we can actually identify when we're having these negative self talks, these thoughts, we can take a moment and reassess those. So we can think, what else could this experience mean? Was there anything good that came out of this experience? What lessons have I learned from this silly mistake? Is this going to matter, a week from now? This one little mess up in a meeting, is that going to matter a month from now? Probably not. Probably not. So that can be very valuable. And then lastly, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. So optimism takes practice. Practicing some of these things over and over again can help you naturally shift to start seeing things in a more positive light. And eventually, these positive spins will start to come out automatically. So practicing retraining yourself on these negative self-talks, it can be tough work, but practice makes perfect over time, basically. And that one's tough. It's certainly easier said than done, but so beneficial in the long run. The next hack is overthinking and social comparison, also known as self-focused rumination. This is thinking too much, needlessly, passively, endlessly, excessively, thinking about the meaning, the causes, the consequences behind your feelings and your problems and things going on. Whew, that's exhausting just saying all of that. But if you struggle with this, actively trying to get out of this overthinking and social comparison can definitely bring about happiness. So many of us believe that when we feel down, focusing inwardly and trying to evaluate our feelings and figure it out can provide us insight and help resolve our issues. But in fact, research shows that ruminating and kind of this overthinking does the opposite. It hones in on these negative thoughts and kind of impairs our ability to solve our problems. So we want to try to avoid that. So let's talk about how. How can we do that? There are four main ways to try to counteract rumination and social comparison. And I would invite you to pick just one of these and focus on this if these are one of the strategies that you choose. First one is to free yourself from the ruminations. Break free of those thoughts. So you can do this by distracting. As soon as you find yourself overthinking, right? Try to find something else to do. Another way you can try to break free of these thoughts is to Stop, like visually think of the word stop, or even shout to yourself in your head, stop, to try to break the cycle. Our thoughts and our mind is very powerful. So even just kind of thinking or picturing like a red stop sign can help break that cycle. Or set aside time to ruminate. When you find yourself caught in a cycle of thoughts, promise yourself that you can think about that later, but maybe not at work. Maybe you can set aside time when you're, I don't know, when you are making dinner to think about some of those things. And then talk to someone, open up to a trusted friend, right? If you find yourself kind of overthinking, voicing your thoughts can often remove the power that they have. So finding someone that you trust and talking to them, writing it out, write out all of those thoughts that you're having. Journaling can be a powerful tool, and countless studies show that writing out these thoughts can be very beneficial. So next, we want to act to solve the problems. If you are feeling overwhelmed by a problem, think about the actual steps it would take to resolve that problem. Find the tiniest action and do it. And this puts us in a solution-oriented mindset. Try to dodge triggers, overthinking triggers. Think about the places, the times, the people that send you into overthinking mode. Try to avoid these situations, right? Maybe you need a break from one friend that tends to make you overthink about things. So trying to avoid that trigger. I also think about social comparison. Social media is a big trigger for social comparison or even overthinking, right? So taking a step back from social media, things like that can be beneficial. And then take in the big picture. Will this matter in a month, in a year? Some people benefit by visualizing themselves in the context of space and time. You are a little speck, a lovely speck, but a speck nonetheless, right? If you find that the issue you are ruminating on will matter in a year, ask yourself how you can learn and grow from that, or what you can do to help with that. But if it doesn't matter in a year, try to kind of break yourself from that cycle. So that is overthinking and social comparison. The next hack is acts of kindness. So a happiness ripple effect, if you will. So how does acts of kindness impact happiness? Helps you see others in a more positive light, provides a sense of connectedness. It makes you feel grateful. It improves how you see yourself, can build confidence and happiness about your own self-image. And again, can create this ripple effect, this pay it forward effect. Helping others leads people to maybe help others in return. So all of these things are benefits to participating in acts of kindness. So let's talk about how to participate in acts of kindness. So opportunities for this are all around you, but often are the hardest things to see because there are things that are right in front of our nose that we don't often do when it comes to acts of kindness. So first way we're going to talk about is give your time. So offer someone to make a repair that they need, or to take your friend's child to the playground, or to look over someone else's taxes for them. It's tax season, guys. Does anyone you know need help with that? Find a little time to help someone. So just giving your time can be an act of kindness. Surprise someone. Surprise someone with a home cooked meal, an outing, a gift, maybe just a phone call. Maybe a letter. Maybe you write a letter to someone and surprise them with that. Very simple, but very, very rewarding. Do more of something that doesn't come naturally. So maybe you don't love talking to strangers in public, but maybe next time you're at a grocery store, Maybe you start chatting with your grocery store cashier. Maybe you give them a little compliment on their mask or something, or smile to a stranger. Smiling looks a little different nowadays. So maybe it's saying hi underneath your mask. I've taken a whole presentation on how to talk and build rapport when wearing a mask. So that's a whole nother thing. But there are things like this that you can do that it might not come naturally, but it can kind of help give back and provide some connectedness. Develop your passion. So this involves imagining what it would be like if you were unable to pay your bills, or if you had to care for an elderly parent, or something like that. This is about like intentionally building empathy and compassion by imagining what it would be like if you were in certain situations. And then lastly, do a kind deed that no one knows about. Um, at least once a week, right? Find something to do for someone else that no one knows about, and you don't expect anything in return. Okay. Um, so the key to acts of kindness is timing and variety. So there were some studies that were done, and basically it showed that um, picking one day a week to commit to one new and maybe special, larger kind of act of kindness, or 3 to 5 little ones are the best ways to practice acts of kindness. So new and special, important acts of kindness are the keywords. And variety. So variety is important to prevent the hedonic adaptation that we had just discussed before, that kind of new car smell that fades away after a while. So if we start getting into the routine of practicing acts of kindness or practicing gratitude, those increased levels of happiness are kind of going to fade away, and we're not going to get the effects that we really want. That's acts of kindness in practice. One thing to keep in mind is that any helping behavior that is burdensome or that interferes with your own daily goals would surely backfire as a path to happiness. So maybe it's the right or honorable thing to do, but there are things, acts of kindness that tend to be a little more burdensome. So if you're able to prevent some of those and kind of practice this in a different way, that's important to keep in mind, if that makes sense. Okay. The next hack is social relationships. The happier a person is, the more likely that he or she is to have a large circle of friends or companions, romantic partner, and ample social support. So, improving your own social relationships can provide a boost in positive emotions, which can then help you attract more and higher quality relationships, which can make you even happier, and so on. So, this in particular is kind of like a cycle, right? The happier a person is, the more friends they have, the better your relationships are, and the more rich relationships you have, the happier you are. So social connection is really, really powerful stuff. And it goes back to our ancestors. There was safety in numbers, right? Hunting together, traveling together, sharing food. This is a natural state for us, is to be social creatures. It's been really hard the last year. It truly has. So maybe you have to be a little more creative with the way that you're social, but don't let your social relationships, go to the back burner when it comes to your life. So in practice, these are some strategies to help improve your own social relationships, and these apply to romantic relationships and friendships. Okay, so both romantic and friendship. So Luba Mirsky, again, Sonia, the one who has written Happiness, the How of Happiness book. I will show you the resources at the end, again, I promise. She suggests picking one of these to work on. If this is a hack that you really want to work on, pick one of these specific ways to practice it. The first one is make time. So studies show that successful couples spend 5 hours more per week being together and talking. So work to committing some extra time each week with your partner, or not just a romantic relationship, but your friendships as well. And let's see. So you might have to be creative, right? Especially if you have children. So perhaps have your child to allow them to watch 15 minutes of a video so that you can have 15 minutes with your partner, things like that. Creative little things like that. Create a routine of time together, right? Take a walk, clean up the kitchen, talk during commercials, and be intentional with your time. If you are sitting with your partner together watching TV, maybe we're unwinding, but we're not really feeling a true connection with that person. So finding time to actually create a true connection with your partner or with your friends. The next way to improve social relationships is expressing admiration, appreciation, and affection. So happy relationships, and this goes with romantic relationships. Happy relationships are characterized by a ratio of positive to negative of 5-to-1. So for every negative statement or behavior, there are 5 positive ones. That's a predictor of happy relationships. So, every time that there's criticizing or nagging or lecturing, there's positive ones like expressing how proud you are of each other, or giving a little kiss during chores, things like that. I love you texts. So again, 5-to-1. So making sure that ratio doesn't kind of get out of hand and doing what you can to increase that ratio. Celebrate good news. So researchers have shown that it's not how partners respond to each other's disappointments, but to the good news that sets successful relationships apart. So I want you guys to think about this. So think about this in your head. How did you react the last time your family member or your partner shared good news? How did they respond when you had good news, right? So celebrating good news means that your partner is pleased for you and he or she respects your dreams and values of your relationship. So paying attention and asking questions, reliving the experience with them, expressing your own happiness. Like, hey, honey, I got that job promotion. Oh my gosh, I am so happy. Not just for you, but I am just happy. As your partner, I am happy, right? Another way to better your social relationships to manage conflict. Secrets from happy couples shows that when they fight, they do something in the middle of the fight to de-escalate that tension. It could be friendly humor or something like that. Share an inner life. So the closest couples and friends share a sense of shared rituals and dreams and goals. So making sure your values align. And hugging. That one's not as easy to do nowadays, but there are a lot of research studies that show that hugging actually has physical effects, positive physical and mental effects, and can increase happiness over time. So the next happiness hack is coping, getting past life's hardships. And this is, again, easier said than done, but there are some things that we can do to help with that. And there are different ways of coping. There's thriving, recovery, and simply survival. So our goal is to try to thrive when we're coping with something. So in practice, one thing to help with coping is to rely on your social network. We have friends and people that we value, for a reason, right? So when you feel like you need to cope or talk to someone, going to your friends and family members can give you a place to belong, room to share your feelings, and to discover that you're not alone, right? Uh, Find a meaning through writing or conversing. Um, if you're really dealing with something, writing out what you're dealing with, even if it's a painful experience, can be shown to help explore your reactions and emotions, and to kind of help cope with that experience. And then challenging your thoughts. So forcing yourself to organize your thoughts, maybe any thoughts that are helping you, that are making you struggle with coping with something, right? So challenging those thoughts. It's almost like the negative self-talk we talked about when we were talking about optimism, right? So we're wired to pick up on potential harms in life, and we often choose the worst explanation for things. Our minds are automatically go to the negative, but challenging those negative thoughts and flipping them can help cope through difficult situations. That was a lot, I know. But again, you're only picking like 4 of these happiness hacks. So far we've talked about these 6, and we're going to continue on to cover the last hacks. This next one is learning to forgive. When we think about forgiveness, we typically think of doing someone else a service, but when in reality, we are forgiving ourselves. So we're doing this for ourselves. So how do we do this? It's pretty tough. So again, try to choose maybe one of these things. But first one is appreciate being forgiven. Think about an instance where you were forgiven before. How did that feel? It probably felt amazing. So thinking about that can help you to forgive others. Imagine forgiveness, empathize with your offender, try to view the situation through their eyes, and think of them as a whole person rather than defining them by maybe what they did. Right, again, you guys will see a lot of these have to do with writing. So write a letter of forgiveness. This takes the imagining to another level. Describe things in detail. State what you wish the other person would have done instead, and end with an explicit statement of forgiveness. And keep in mind, this letter does not need to be sent. You can send this letter, but just writing it out is beneficial. Consider charitable attributions. Again, like see the offender as a whole person rather than, exactly what they did. Ruminate less. When something bad happens, we replay it in our head over and over again. Try to stop yourself from doing that. We talked a little bit about how to actually do that. Distract yourself or think of a red stop sign, right? Ruminate less about the situation. And then lastly, remind yourself what's at stake. So let's see. I have an example. When Nelson Mandela was asked how he was able to bring himself to forgive his jailers, he said, "When I walked out of the gate, I knew that if I continued to hate these people, then I was still in prison." So remind yourself of that. Okay, flow experiences. I know that Bree did not get to hear this part of the presentation, but this idea of flow was developed by a happiness philosopher in the 1960s, and it's a state of intense absorption and involvement with the present moment. So all of these things that are listed here are flow experiences. So I want you guys to think in your head, like if you've ever experienced a flow experience before, and what you were doing maybe during that flow experience. An example for me is like when I'm playing and singing a song. When I'm playing my guitar and singing a song, sometimes I realize that 2 hours went by and I had no clue. Or maybe dinner time passed and I wasn't even hungry because I was so kind of in that flow in the present moment. So there are ways that oftentimes these flow experiences just happen, right? But there are ways that we can increase these flow experiences. One is to try new things. Flow experiences often happen when you are trying something new or a little bit challenging. So maybe it's cooking for 10, joining a softball team, hiking, um, learning how to knit or learning a new language, right? Try to imitate children. So much of what they learn is new and they're fascinated by it. So it's almost like that. Another way is to transform the routine. Anything can be transformed into something meaningful and stimulating. So even if it's a trip to the dentist or something that is part of our routine, we can kind of turn into these flow experiences. So maybe we kind of, while we're waiting for the bus to arrive, we solve puzzles in our heads, or we tap melodies to our favorite songs in our head. So kind of making a game out of our everyday experiences can help to maybe get us in these flow situations. Basically, if you can't get out of it, get into it, if that makes sense. And then know what flows. Again, think about if you've ever experienced flow before, and what you were doing when you were experiencing that flow. Try to do that again. Again, these flow experiences often happen in high challenge, high skill situations. And they often do occur at work. Some of us are challenged at work and we get into the flow if we have to like hone in and get stuff done. But see if you can find flow experiences outside of work as well. The next happiness hack is savoring. So savoring is really being fully in the present moment. But not only that, it's thinking about the past and the future as well. So it's reminiscing about the good old days. You can think about that as the past. In the present, savoring is wholly living in and being mindful of and relishing the present moment. And the future is anticipating and fantasizing about upcoming events. These are things that can help bring about happiness. So relish the everyday. One way to kind of do this in practice. Consider your daily activities like brushing your teeth or eating lunch. Do you ever sit down and kind of notice and savor these occurrences, or do you dash through them? Right? So like next time you go outside or you go use the restroom at work, like I just passed by someone and they waved to me. Like that was such a nice moment, right? I'm really kind of savoring that moment instead of just letting it pass by me. Replay and transport. Relive joyous moments. Transport yourself back to those experiences. Reliving these moments has been shown to bring out positive emotions, and even reminiscing with someone else, mutual reminiscence can bring about joy as well. It's almost like intentional daydreaming. Create a smile file on your phone or computer. Find pictures and videos and things that just bring you joy, so that when you're ever kind of struggling, you can go back to those things and bring that joy back to your life. And then take in the transience of experiences. It's kind of bittersweet, but basically it's recognizing that maybe we won't be in this job or at this age forever, right? Recognizing that things come and go, that can help you truly appreciate the present moment. For example, if I know that, I don't know, if I'm getting married 5 months from now, right? Recognizing that feeling is right around the corner. It's transient. It's not going to be here forever. It can make me really cherish the way that I'm feeling right now. So again, taking in that transience of experiences can help us savor the everyday. Committing to your goals is another hack. this quote on the bottom is find a happy person and you will find a project. So people who strive for something personally significant, whatever it is, tend to be happier. So committing to your goals and finding different kinds of goals that you want to pursue. So there are 4 different types of goals. We don't have to go through all of those, but it's really about creating and pursuing goals, right? Research shows that happiness actually comes from pursuing goals and having that motivation, but not necessarily from achieving them. Okay, so happiness comes from pursuing and actively just having this sort of like purpose or something that you strive for can help bring happiness. So relish in the journey, no matter the destination, because the journey is what brings us happiness. And practicing religion and spirituality. And these terms are often used interchangeably, but how does this impact happiness? Religions and spirituality encourage positive, low-stress lifestyles, gives us a sense of identity, can give us comfort in troubled times. It can give us a feeling that we're unconditionally loved and valued, right? And a purpose and a meaning for life. And this is, based on countless studies. So practicing religion and spirituality, some things that you can do, of course, join or recommit to a temple, a church, a mosque, any sort of spiritual program, right? Maybe it's spending 15 minutes engaging in some sort of spirituality daily, volunteering for a faith-based charity, learning about other religions can be spiritual in itself, and finding the sacred in ordinary life. All of these are ways that we can practice spirituality in ourselves. And the last hack, I know we have 3 more minutes, but this one's kind of the most self-explanatory one, and that is taking care of your body. This is your one body to live in, but 3 different ways you can do that is practicing meditation, being more active. It doesn't mean going to the gym 7 days a week, but being more active and acting happy. This last one's interesting. So studies have shown that pretending you're happy by smiling or laughing can actually physically and emotionally earn you the benefits of actually being happy. So going back to that happiness file, that smile file, right? Even if you're not happy and you fake it, right? It actually has those effects of making you happy. Fake laughs, like fake laughing is what we're talking about here. So I find that interesting. So laugh more, smile more, find activity that you love. When it comes to meditation, there are countless resources out there. So starting small, sitting still, trying to do nothing, maybe for 5 minutes. All of those ways are ways to practice happiness. So with 2 minutes left, we've gone through all 12, and hopefully you picked like 4 or less hacks that you actually want to work on. And hopefully you took some notes throughout. But remember that happiness is within our reach if we reach for the right things. It's not our circumstances. It is our behaviors, our thoughts, these things that we have control over that bring us the most happiness. And there are things that we can do today. And I invite you all to choose one thing that you want to do starting today to work on your happiness. Okay, so daily positive moments. These are the things that truly bring us happiness. So aim for increasing those many moments of happiness that we experience every day. Act of kindness, a hope for the future, the exhilaration of a great workout if we're taking care of our body as a happiness hack. These are things that increase our baseline level of happiness over time. Thank you guys so much. It is 1:30. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you want to take a picture of this, these are the two books that I had mentioned. You can certainly do so right now. And again, I hope you have a great day. And I'll keep this up for a few minutes if you want to write this down or take a picture of this. Have a great day.